Hello and welcome to Persons of Interest. My name is Derek Dockett. Over the last 2 years or so, I've attempted to give a little extra care to my lawn, going above the standard mowing and watering. Now, on my own, I had no idea of what to do and how to do it, but I discovered a community of lawn care enthusiasts who share tips, most of them utilizing YouTube. I came to realize that caring for your lawn isn't as difficult as one might think, and practically anyone can be a do-it-yourselfer when it comes to lawn care with the right ideas, the right supplies, and the right guidance. Now, one of those individuals that I discovered is the lawn guardian, Ben Hicks. He lives in the St. Louis, Missouri area, and he too shares a lot of his tips and tricks in his personal YouTube channel. I had the opportunity to meet up with Ben, and we talked about our common interest in lawn care and how we both learn from others in the lawn care community online. And we talked about an interesting way to give back to the local community by being involved in a project called Raising Men Lawn Care. This is Ben Hicks, the lawn guardian on Persons of Interest. Well, in this edition of Persons of Interest, I am really excited about this one because it's great to meet someone that I've interacted with on social media that we share a common interest about lawn care, but we'll talk about some of the specific things like that. But I've got right here from St. Louis, he's one, I guess you probably are our local lawn care nut extraordinaire. You're our Alan Hain, right?
I wouldn't say that. I'd say there's probably more people that are the Alan Hain that just maybe aren't as public on social media. But I guess as far as being active on social media and living in St. Louis, I guess sure, if you want to put it that. But well, I'm no Alan Hain by any means. Well,
that is the voice of Ben Hicks. He is the lawn guardian. He's got a great YouTube channel. One of the ones that I first discovered, I think even before I discovered Alan, quite honestly, because
really,
yeah. And I'll tell you my background. So we've been talking here for probably about an hour before we even started recording. So a buddy of mine, and I think my lawn my interest in taking better care of my lawn really picked up 2 summers ago, not this past summer, but the summer before. And I wasn't using Milorganite either. I was just using some Scott stuff. But I was just more interested in figuring out how can I make my lawn look great. And I was just striping my lawn. That's it. Sure. I wasn't using the right fertilizer. Sure. I wasn't watering the right way. But a buddy of mine sent me, he goes, check out this YouTube video. This guy says you should water in the mornings. We've been watering in the afternoons and the evenings when we go home from work. I'm like, that's interesting. And I know the first one I saw, you were mowing on a hill.
Yeah,
I guess is that your backyard?
Yeah, it's like a 23 or 24 degree slope. It's pretty steep.
It looks awful, by the way. I'm like, I've got a slight incline, but you have a monster hill. So.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal to mow on it, especially with the mower I have. It's pretty heavy, so it can. Yeah. I wish I had before and after pictures. When we first moved in, there was tons of erosion issues, and there was literally giant ruts from water just taking the dirt and soil down the hill, and we had to get all that taken care of because it looks 1,000 times better than it ever did.
So what was the process to get that taken care of? Did you have to do a lot of
I didn't myself because it was I think I could have maybe over months of sure. Several months, but the problem with all the erosion is especially on a steep slope like that is you have to get it done relatively quick because I could have done it myself and weld out that dry creek bed on the side of my yard. But, if you have a big rainstorm that comes in while you're in the middle of it, it can just kind of wash more soil away and cause, greater problems and stuff like that. So I just hired somebody to come in and they did that and put up a retaining wall. And because I remember before doing that, I actually was watching a lot of YouTube videos on retaining walls and how to correct erosion issues on a hill. Like the dirt monkey at the stand, I always get his last name mixed up. It's like Greinikek or something like that. It's the dirt monkey on YouTube.
Okay.
He does a lot of videos on retaining walls, and but then I realized it's just outside of what I thought I could do at an appropriate speed.
Sure.
So, and I didn't want it to fail, and then I wasted my time and money on those types of things because to me it was a thing that I couldn't risk it failing. If it was, something small that wasn't supporting things of that nature, I would maybe give it a try. But
this is something that has an effect on the yard.
Oh, yeah. Like if
the house.
it could actually, it could have, pulled the deck down over time and affected the foundation of the house and those types of things. So I need a professional to kind of take care of that. So.
Understandable. I'm all about getting professionals when needed. So I'm going to try to be a little bit more handy myself, but it takes some time. So.
Yeah.
So, okay. I'm curious to know, and your YouTube channel has been around for a while now. When did you first take an interest in lawn care type stuff?
So one of the fondest memories that I had growing up was, I was mowing my parents' yard. They'd pay me, a little bit of money to mow our yard. And then I kind of had a few people, customers, if you want to call them, in the neighborhood I grew up down in Dallas, that I'd mow their lawn. And I, frankly, up until the last year and a half, 2 years, the only thing I really knew about was just, how to mow your lawn and do a good job at it, like, straight edges.
Right.
And, but even then I didn't know what I know now, because in Dallas, you mostly cut Bermuda, and I was cutting that probably like 3 inches, and we'd always see the short Bermuda, and we always thought that was just a different kind of Bermuda. But then as I learned more over the last 2 years, it's like, well, actually any Bermuda in general should be cut really low, and, 1.5, 2 inches or lower. So, that's where, back to your question, I was rambling, but, I did a lot of yard work with my mom. That was, one of the greatest memories I had growing up was just working with my mom out in the yard doing landscape work. And I just love being outside, working with my hands, sweating, and, kind of getting a workout that way. So, I would always say I've always enjoyed mowing the yard. I was never that kid that my parents had to drag me out to go do a chore.
Time to go do your chore.
Yeah, exactly. I always loved doing it. There was obviously some days as a kid you didn't want to go do it, but it wasn't ever like a pulling hair for me. I always loved doing it, and now I love it even more because I have learned more. So,
So I mentioned Alan. So for folks that haven't are not as enthusiasts as we are about our lawn and members of our Facebook group, the St. Louis area Lawn Care Nuts, but so there's a gentleman, Alan Hain. He is the lawn care nut that we keep mentioning.
I would say I think Ryan Norris said it. He's like the pioneer of DIY YouTube lawn care stuff. I mean, I think he's the one that a lot of people will end up finding and realizing like he's the kind of the one that started a lot of that. And I think he would probably say, like, "Oh, stop." He's kind of humble in that way, but it is,
you
it's
look
very
at his videos. He's branched out to his own podcast now.
Yeah.
He's got the warm and cool season grass guides out there. I mean, his site has all kinds of stuff. He's got wearables now. I mean, they've got LCN stickers and everything like that. So, when did you first discover him? Because I just found him this past summer, and that's where I got latched on to Milorganite, which is a type of fertilizer, and now it's become one of the more popular ones, as like you can barely find it in stock in the right time of the year. But how did you first discover him?
So I first found him. We moved into our current house. It'll be 3 or 4 years this year. We moved in 2016, so 3 years. And when we moved in, the yard wasn't all that great, and I needed a lot of work doing. And like I said, at that point, all I knew what to do was mow. I didn't know anything about renovation or seeding. I knew that putting seed on dirt and watering it, you're probably going to grow grass, but I didn't know how to maintain that. So I did, I was doing research, learning. I actually learned a lot from Roger off of This Old House. He's the outdoor guy, and then I also found Alan, and I was kind of developing my plan because in fall of 2017, I did not really a full renovation. I didn't kill anything off, but I just scalped my front yard all the way down and aerated, top dressed, and seeded. And I developed my plan through, the things I learned from Roger from This Old House and Alan Hain. And that's when I found Alan, I was like, all right, well, now there's this Ryan Knorr guy, and now there's, now there's Connor, and now that's how a lot of people get into this community. They find one guy and then it just snowballs, and you find so many other people. But that's kind of how I found Alan, and I've actually, since we did when I found Alan, I got in contact with a lot of those guys to do that fundraiser, and it's just been really cool to be a part of that whole community, in St. Louis, and it's just really cool.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the fundraiser and raising men lawn care in a little bit. So I don't know if Alan even saw this coming, but it seems like last summer things just sort of exploded.
Oh, yeah.
And like everything that he was doing, like people were paying attention to, and there are brands that are sending him product to try this. His YouTube channel just got more popular. Milorganite is a thing now that more people know about.
Yeah.
And I guess that just spawned this larger community, people that are curious about how do I take care of my lawn the right way. And I know I was one of those where, again, a buddy of mine who found you, we then were following Alan. It's like, oh, he's got this YouTube group. So we jumped in there, and this is when it first started. I mean, now the group's probably got 60,000 people or something in it. But this is when it was like, maybe 6,000. And we're just like following on, and people were just posting pictures of grass. Help, how do I get rid of this? Or help, what kind of grass do I have? And that's sort of where I just sort of like, well, okay, fertilizer. Okay, these 4 days, the Milorganite schedule, that's what I started doing last year. That just all sort of picked up and got my mind going. And I'm like, wow, so this is a thing. So if you just follow this, it can't be too difficult.
Right.
For you, you've got a little bit more knowledge. You're more probably beyond just the basics, fertilizer and treating weeds, things like that. What things are you doing that go a little bit above and beyond the regular schedule? Like how are you treating weeds on a regular basis? What's your mowing schedule? Because I'll tell you this is a good one. When I mow once a week, actually. Yeah. And my neighbors go, man, you're mowing again? I'm like, well, I mow really tall. And I water when it needs it, right. And I fertilize, so my grass grows. They just want to get out there and do it, and they don't want to mow until it needs it.
Right.
What's your mowing? Are you a once a week guy too?
No, I mean, obviously, like most people that are in the community, they're all homeowners, so they do it when they can. Right. And I try to do it at least once a week, if not more. Okay. And it can be challenging because we got two little ones, so I can't always do it when it needs it. So it might be a little taller. And that's one of the great things I like about Alan's channel is he like talks about that as far as I'm mowing my yard, it's overgrown and this, that, and the other. But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of I find time when I can. If I can, I get twice a week if it needs it during the growing season. And sometimes it's just, I think people that are nutty like all of us, even if it doesn't need to be mowed or
we want to get out there and do it. Yeah.
Because I remember this last year I was trying to make a striper for my mower, and I think I mowed like the day before I made the striper, and I put it on the mower. And I was like, I'm going to go mow the front yard. And I'm like, my wife is going to think I'm weird. And she actually came out, and I think she was a little like perturbed because I hadn't really been inside, with the kids and her and spending time. I'm like, I'm sorry. I just wanted to test it out.
I get the same way. It gets that way when I get a new piece of equipment. Like I've now started investing more in equipment. That's one thing I want to ask you about too. But I guess let's go with this route. If you were to give advice to a beginner looking to improve their lawn, like it's perfect time now. We just hit March here in St. Louis. Mm-hmm. We'll get snow tomorrow, but we're going to turn the corner here soon. Yeah. We're going to get to the season where it's time to start getting back out there and taking care of it. If you were to give somebody tips and their lawn it's not a disaster, but they just need a little bit of work, sure, what would you tell them?
I mean, I think one of the biggest things that most people they overlook, because it's easy to get wrapped up into all the different information out there as far as fertilizing and all those types of things. And really the three basic things that people need to get down more than anything is mowing the correct height for your grass type, mowing with a sharp blade, and then watering appropriately. I think people typically water too often and not long enough. And I think if you get those three things down, you need to really get those down and own those three things first before you start going into, renovations or seeding. And, if I think people can, kind of take in all of that and do more than that at one time. But I think somebody that's never really done a lot of those things, I would just say, hey, get these 3 things down pat, and then, work on that. Maybe the first year you start doing your own yard stuff, just figure out how to mow it right and figure out how to water it right. And then the next year, all right, my front yard, I want to start, seeding or fertilizing it appropriately. And then kind of build from there. I think some people try to bite off more than they can chew, and then they get overwhelmed. They're like, oh, I failed. And then I think that's how a lot of people get discouraged, is they're like, well, I've seeded and it doesn't ever come up. And it's like, well, did you, how are you watering it? Well, I watered it like 5 minutes each day. I was like, well, you got to, there's got things you got to do differently to be successful with the seed. Because I think, there are obviously different qualities of seed, but it can come down to, well, those fundamental things, did you do correctly? Because most seed is going to grow if you're doing the right things to it. So,
yeah. And I've discovered learning the ground, what your soil is, what that's doing underneath, all that stuff matters. Now, I consider myself, I'm past the beginners. I know how to mow.
Yeah.
I've got a striper, and I even learned sometimes changing up the direction in which you mow can be helpful, because you're not mowing in the same pattern all the time.
Right.
And having taller grass helps because you can shade the grass and it won't burn and things like that. So I've got those kinds of things down. I even invested in this gizmo. And where's my phone? I have a wireless water, I don't have an in-ground sprinkler system. I've got hoses, but I know you've probably seen it where you can control it from your phone.
Yeah.
Because I was, like I mentioned to you earlier, I was watering my grass. I come home from work at 5 o'clock. It's like, oh, I should probably water. It hadn't rained in forever. And I just thought, hey, get water. You never realized, when the sun goes down, it gets cooler at night, could be creating mold in the lawn. Yep. I didn't realize that kind of stuff. So I took the plunge last summer, and I got something where I control my sprinkler, set it on the timer, and I set my I have 4 heads in the front yard, and they all go off intervals, 5 o'clock in the morning, 5:30, 6:30. So I get it in the morning. So obviously I'm like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Give it water in the morning, and then in the heat in the day, that water burns off, and then it's not just drying in the lawn.
Right.
Wow, rocket science. It's like learning those kinds of things I would have never guessed.
Right.
I started using Milorganite last year. I learned the difference between when to use weed killer type stuff and all those kinds of things. Because I'll be honest, one day, in a previous life, I would have just said, all right, put down some fertilizer. All right, put down this weed and feed. I'm like, I don't know what I was going to do, but we'll see what it does.
Yeah.
And I'm realizing, well, I'm counteracting. Nothing's going to, you're just not doing it and wasting my money pretty much.
Right.
So learning all those types of things. My goal for this year is hopefully, now I did seed for the first time my front and backyard. So I had some success too, and especially in the backyard. But I'm really hoping to maintain that green look year round. And I know watering is part of that. The weed killing part is the next step that I really want to get into that I struggle with. Mm-hmm. I've used some, it's the weed killer. It's the granular stuff.
Yeah.
And I had some success with it, but I don't want to overdo it. I don't want to kill the grass. And it says it won't kill grass. That's my next plunge, is using those types of products. You've probably got way more experience than I do, especially using even more liquid products, things you apply with a sprayer. What would you suggest on the best ways of killing weeds and doing it the pre-emergent type stuff?
Well, I guess to be honest, if you're going to use a granular type thing, like a prodiamine, like what Alan will suggest on his guides, following the label rates, and you say you use Milorganite, and I think that's where, Alan will say, if you're not comfortable with your weed killers and pre-emergence, as far as spreading them, get comfortable with your spreader by using Milorganite or an organic fertilizer, because you can't hurt your lawn doing that.
Which is great.
Yeah. And that's where people that's why he advocates and started to advocate that so much, because it does help. It's kind of the gateway for people to get into feeling comfortable with that. Because once you understand and kind of get used to your equipment, it's easy to, okay, well, now I want to do a pre-emergent or, a blanket application of a weed and feed or something like that. With the granular stuff, then you feel more comfortable because you've already, used your spreader to put, fertilizer down. What I have done last year, so a little preface to this is up until like over the last 2 years, I knew nothing about fertilizer other than what I could read on the bag at Home Depot or Lowe's. So
okay.
I didn't know.
So you're not that far off.
No, not at all. I don't want to come off as like, oh, I'm this Mr. Know-it-all. Like I know very little, probably just as much as, some of the guys on Facebook or Twitter.
You're
and,
just absorbing it like the rest of us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I just last year was the first time I ever did any sort of, pre-emergent application. Last year was really the first year I did any sort of fertilizing because I never did any of that when I was a kid.
Okay.
And so when it came to the prodiamine, I'm one of those guys. I'm a perfectionist, so I want to make sure I do things like right. And so I measured it out. I measured my lawn to make sure I knew the square footage of the spot, and then I weighed out. So I think prodiamine last year I put 5 pounds. According to Alan's pre-emergent guide, he did it differently. It was like 5 pounds per 1,000 square feet. So, I did the math, figured out how much of that particular product I need, weighed it in a bucket, and I actually had a luggage scale. And I weighed out the product and put it in my spreader. That way I knew I wasn't going to over apply because I measured out the exact amount of product I needed for that particular area in the lawn. So that's one thing I think, people can do that have never done it and to get more comfortable, because hopefully I don't always measure stuff out. I can just kind of dump it in the spreader and be like, oh, that looks about right and good, and then go. Because I think that's what professionals and people like that have done it for years, they don't need to weigh things out because they've done it so many times. They just kind of know that it's like second nature to them. They know they know the feel of it.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's good to know. So you're just taking it in like the rest of us. So now I know you've probably got some your preference of equipment and things like that. What are you mowing with?
So I'm a big Honda guy. I drive Honda cars, and I have a Honda mower. Actually, growing up, we had a really old Honda mower. It was like an HR214, I think it was, and the thing was like, I don't know, close to 30 years old before it died.
Wow, that's a good run, though.
And my parents bought another Honda mower when I was still mowing my parents' lawn when I was in high school and whatnot. So I bought that from them when we moved into our current house, because they moved all over to electric stuff. And I'm brand loyal to Honda, but I know I've never heard bad things about Toro, and every brand I feel like has their lower end and high end stuff, and
how much you ever want to spend.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm more of on the side of things like, I'm a homeowner, but not everything I want to buy do I want to buy like the homeowner quality. Sometimes I want to buy like the professional quality because it's going to be more expensive, but I probably will never have to buy another one of those because it's going to last a long time, because professional products are made to be used on hundreds of lawns every day. So that's just kind of my preference of typically, going toward more of the professional end of things. And if somebody doesn't want to do that, then maybe finding like a middle grade or starting out with the lower end of things and kind of work your way up with, products that you can afford over time or something like that. So
that was my first go at it. My first lawnmower that I bought when we moved into our house, I actually got off Craigslist from an old couple that they didn't need it anymore. They gave it to me for $30. And I was like, oh, this would be great. It eventually just sort of died out. It would take several pulls to get that thing going. I'm like, man, there's gas in it. I cleaned the engine, oil. I did everything to it. It had nothing left in the tank. Literally, just had nothing. Like, even putting gas in it, it had nothing else left in the tank. So I stepped up to I don't want to call it a basic level, but it was just like a low level lawnmower that I found on sale at one of the big box stores. And it gave me a good, probably 3-4 year run at our house. And then it just, in the middle of mowing, of course, that's when it happens. No mower dies when you're not using it, right?
Right.
In the middle of mowing, the thing died. I'm like, you're kidding me. And I'm pulling. I'm like, is it out of gas? I'm like, no, it's got gas. Pulling, nothing's happening. So immediately I went to Home Depot and I bought a Honda mower, and I saw this thing. It was actually a return. It's like, this just looks like a pretty good deal. And then looking at it, I'm like, it's got 2 blades. I'm like, looks pretty good. I didn't do any research, which I kind of sort of regret, but now I got a pretty decent mower, I found out. And I mean, still, I've had this mower now for 3 years, I think, 3 or 4 years. One pull every time. I mean, even on the first pull after the winter, it's ready to go. And I'm taking care of it. Like I've learned things from Alan and from watching you about, draining the fuel and at the end of the season, and spark plugs and just blade maintenance. That's actually one thing that I jumped into at the middle of the season. Was I have 2 sets of blades now. Yep. And I take one to my local Ace Hardware, and they charge me $5 to sharpen the blades, and I have another set that I use while they've got that set of blades for 3 days.
Same thing I do too.
It's great.
Yeah,
it's great. But I noticed the difference in the lawn.
Oh, yeah.
Like I'd never, on any of those previous mowers or when I first got the Honda mower, I never sharpened the blade. And I'm like, oh, that matters? Okay. And of course, now I get closer to the lawn. I look at it. I go, okay, I can see the edges. They're sort of ripped. And I got that blade sharpened this summer, and I put a new one on there. I was like, oh, man, I can see when you see the entire lawn versus looking up close, you really do see the difference, especially when I am a nut about striping the lawn. So I'm like, wow, this makes a lot of sense now. So I'm adding all that stuff collectively into the repertoire of my lawn maintenance thing. So, but you talk about brand loyalty. I love the Ryobi products, and they're not a sponsor. I don't have any sponsors on this podcast, but my trimmer, edger, blower, I even have a extended trimming arm thing, all Ryobi, and mostly because cordless and the battery. I love the battery part of it. That's sort of where I flopped to, and it sort of worked out pretty well for me. So I find it interesting that, and like I said, I've seen Alan use different types of things. He's never promoted one more than the other. People send him stuff. He uses it. It is what it is. But people are always curious what the pros use and how they get the lawn to look. It's like basketball shoes, People want to get what the superstars are wearing because they think it's going to make them play like it, Yep. So that's interesting that you're, like I said, you're just right there with us, absorbing the same information.
Well, I'd say like for the trimmers and blowers, I use Still or Steel or Echo, because I think when I was mowing my parents' yard, I think we had a relatively cheap trimmer, and it kept breaking, and we had a cheap blower and it kept breaking, and then we went to the local like dealer where professionals buy stuff, and we bought something that was we bought a Still blower and a Echo trimmer, and you're paying more, but there's a reason why you're paying. Right. I mean, not all the time. I'm not going to always say like the most expensive things are always the best, but I think sometimes it is the brands make expensive stuff for commercial people, so it's probably going to last a bit longer and you're eliminating some of the headache of
when you actually use the equipment. Yeah, I feel that way about trimmers. Like I can't tell you my first one stringing that thing, and every time I stopped it, it's like, oh. And once I got the better quality Ryobi one, like, I mean, I can use that thing 3 times before the string would, get tied up or something like that. So, and I know they make adjustment things where you can get on there that don't even use strings on it. But
I mean, I think over the last, I'm just a homeowner and I'm ignorant to this, but I do feel like over the last, 10 years, a lot of stuff has come a long way when it just comes for the homeowner side of things. Right. Because I think some of the, brands like Ryobi and other things, they've taken some of the things that are put in professional products and they put them in the homeowner products, and then you kind of get a better quality product overall. So
we've been talking about equipment, and we all know you got to have a mower. Not everyone uses a blower. Some people just sweep the old-fashioned way.
I know a lot of people that hate the blowers. They're like, "Oh, I hate the sound."
Really?
Oh yeah, I've had.
Man, I can't live without a blower now.
I've had people like, I think they should be outlawed and illegal because of the noise. And my argument is that, okay, well, how do you mow your lawn?
Yeah, I mean,
do you use a push mower? Because I bet it's still a gas power rotary mower that makes noise.
Maybe they're using real mowers.
I mean, if that's the case, because they're usually like, well, people just need to use brooms and do it that way. It's like, well, if you're gonna go that far, then what do you mow your lawn with? Do you mow your lawn with a push reel mower, because that's really the
only way to be
the
quiet.
greenest and quietest way to do something. So.
Wow, I've never heard that take. Well, I was going to get at because when I first started taking care of my own lawn, I did not have an edger. They make edgers. I was using my trimmer with the string to edge, and I got an edger this summer. And man, again, the difference that it makes when you're using the right piece of equipment to accomplish what you want to accomplish, man, it matters. This is a long way of me asking, what equipment do you think? And again, for a beginner, mower, trimmer, whatever it is, hedge trimmer, the stuff that you think really makes a difference, the types of equipment that you think, boy, you really should have one of these if you want this to look good. Is there something that you think that you've had experience with that you won't personally live without anymore?
I've never owned an edger. Okay. I've done all of my edging along a house or the garden beds with a trimmer or a whippersnipper, as some of the Australian people say. And I do all my edging along the streets with that, because I've never had an edger, so I just figured out how to do it with one piece of equipment. So I would say most people, they probably aren't able to, or they don't want to take the time to learn that. So I would, if you're wanting to edge, I think it'd be get one of those tools or the trimmers that has the detachable heads that you can, put an edger head on, or a trimmer head, or even pruning shears on for pruning a tree or doing a hedge trimmer. I think it's pretty versatile for most homeowners to do a large variety of tools. So I'd say, that's maybe one of the second to the mower. That's probably the next piece of equipment most people would want to get when it comes to, starting to maintain their own yard and those types of things. Because you don't need a blower. You can use a broom. I don't personally care for the people that leaves the clippings out on the grass or on the sidewalk and street. I would, if I didn't because when we first moved into the house that we have now, I didn't have a blower. I was borrowing my neighbors, or I just go out there with the broom. And actually what I did is one time I took the top of my shop vac off, and how you can reverse it to blow. Yeah. I used that to blow the clip. So I was carrying that around with an extension cord. Nice. I mean, it worked, but
you make do.
Yeah,
you make do what you have.
That's the thing about homeowners or DIY-ers at least, is we figure out a way to get something done.
That's a perfect leeway into my next question. I mentioned striping. And that's, I don't want to say I'm a nut about striping, but I just love the way it looks. Yeah. I love the baseball look feel. And I always sometimes Instagram the picture, no filter. Man, it's one of those things when you get done, you're like, okay, I guess it's the curb appeal. It's really about and that's probably why we all do this. It's the curb appeal of the house. Yeah. So I don't have one of the Toro or one of the fancy stripers you fill with sand or water and it attaches to your back of the lawnmower. I made a DIY striper. And here's what I did. And I actually got this off of YouTube as well. I found at Home Depot they're probably about, I don't know, they're about as wide as my lawnmower.
Sure.
And I got these end caps to put on it. I filled the two they're like PVC pipes, I guess. Filled them with sand and put the end caps on it and put duct tape on it to hold them just so to make sure they wouldn't be on there, that they would hold tight on there. And then I had two of those. I zip tied those two together, and then I took those two and I took a zip tie around both, and I extended that to my mower. So I just literally have these two pipes behind my mower as weight. Yep. And that's weighing down, because that's what striping I've found out
all it is.
It's putting weight on the grass, and when you walk in that direction, the grass is laying down.
It's kind of like crop circles.
Yeah.
They're just bending the grass down a certain direction to have the reflection of the light. And from the sun.
I know there are some people that have the mowers that have the rock guard on the back and things like that, and other things on it that will also, we often see the tires. Yeah. The tire tread marks in the mower laying down the grass. But it really makes a difference. Now, granted, I don't have one of the real ones. Do you have a legit striper?
I don't have one either.
So what do you do?
I don't. I striped a handful of times when I had the DIY one, and then actually when I was using it, it broke, and I never bothered to try to fix it because I just the one I made, I just kind of used parts around the house, and I bought a few things from the hardware store, and it broke, and I have a way to make it more, robust,
Sure.
but I've like priced out all the pieces. I'm like, well, that's almost as much as like an actual professional grade one. I was like, I know if I buy that, it's going to last and it's going to work, but I don't know if this is truly going to work as good or if it's going to last and those types of things. So, in the long run, I plan on getting something and buying something, but it's just not one of the top priorities,
But you're not anti-striping, though.
No.
Okay.
I think
know there's some people that are like, I just like the green style look, but you do appreciate the stripes.
Oh,
look.
yeah. I mean, some mowers actually just do a good striping job by themselves. You don't even need.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I've seen the Toro Time Master.
Yeah.
Those things lay down some pretty good stripes with no kit on them at all.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All right. So watering for folks that are listening, I really want this one to hit home for folks that may not care about lawn, but hopefully we're educating some folks here with our conversation. I mentioned I first started, I just say, hey, I'd get home at 5 o'clock. I'm like, wow, it looks like it needs some watering. Then I learned quickly that, boy, you shouldn't have water sitting in your lawn overnight because that can increase the chance for mold in the lawn, and then creates other issues. So I learned that the best time to do it, doing it in the mornings, things like that, so that you can get it up before get water down before the sun comes up. And watering in the heat of the day is pointless because your water evaporates and your lawn's going to get as much water as you think you might be putting down. Mm-hmm. So I learned all these tricks and things like that. Invested in a gauge to put in the yard, so I know that I'm getting that inch or inch and a half of water. Things that I had no clue about. I was just put the sprinkler out and let it go for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Put the sprinkler out, let it go for an hour. Whatever. And I had no clue how much water is putting down. In your experience about watering, and I know there are different things, and depends on the lawn, so it's case by case basis. But for you, just your personal experience, what have you found has worked best, including like things like any suggestions about sprinkler heads? Do you have an in-ground system?
No, mine's all
yours.
Mine's all done through. I have impact sprinklers that I just screw on the end of the hose and move those around. And it took me a long time to figure out the best way to best place to place those to get the best coverage and the most efficient
which is important.
coverage.
That's another thing people need to know.
Yes,
cover, like not just putting in the middle of the yard and just letting it go.
Right.
Make sure you're covering the most amount of your yard as possible,
and not being wasteful at the same time.
Sure.
Because I initially just had an oscillating, those ones that fan out and they go back and forth. I had one of those, but it was irritating to me because it was typically always too windy or something like that. And it was really, the biggest thing was it was too hard for me to figure out how to place that and get good coverage on the lawn. Mm-hmm. So I just did away with that and got a couple impact sprinklers and kind of did it that way. And again, this kind of falls back to the fertilizing stuff. Like I literally, up until the last year and a half, never watered a lawn because my parents had an in-ground system and it was never my responsibility. I was just the guy that mowed the lawn. So I'm just like probably most of the guys that are listening to this. I just kind of picked stuff up and learned, and by no means am I a professional. I just have kind of learned things, and but that's the biggest thing. Is I would just say, play around with sprinklers. I personally really like impact sprinklers because I think you're going to get the most water down the fastest, and you're going to get relatively good coverage with those. And I think you can. The one thing I like about those is you can adapt them and kind of play with them if it is windy, so you can keep the water lower to the ground and those types of things. And that's one thing most people shouldn't do is if it's super windy, don't bother watering because it's just going to be a waste anyway.
Water.
Exactly.
Yeah. And water's not cheap in some cases. As your water bill, mine did show last July. It's kind of like, granted, I've seen water bills more than what I saw mine. And I was like, $144. Well, mine's normally like $60. It's kind of like, it hits you.
That's another thing. I was like, if you're a homeowner and you don't have the money to spend on water during the summer,
that also
you can let it go dormant. You can you still have to water to some extent. You're just not watering as consistent. You're letting the grass go dormant and those types of things. So, I guess that's my experience with watering is just, testing. And I think that's really the biggest thing about lawn care in general is most people are kind of afraid to try, and they think they're just going to fail. And I think I've heard Connor Ward or Alan Haynes say most homeowners are afraid to do things, and they're kind of and just getting out and trying something and testing it out and trial and error. I mean, that's the only way you're going to learn. And if you want to go through that trial and error process, you'll figure it out. If you don't feel like doing all of that, then I guess you'll just hire a company. But
right. And I think that's when I first started seeing it, I'm like, man, they make it look so easy. You got to give it a shot. And it's weird because I'm that way when I'm come to like work related things, or like when I'm doing some graphic design works, like you see if it works, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, back to the drawing board.
I will say it is not easy for me to say that, because like I said, I'm a perfectionist, and I hate making mistakes.
That's what I say. For me, I'm willing to try it. If I hurt my arm, like it'll come back. I'll put some seed down, or it'll come back in a couple of weeks, whatever.
Exactly.
How do you handle that though? You want to maintain a good look.
I don't like, because I guess one of the biggest things this past year was having that construction, that the utility, they're doing some utility work in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
And that really grind my gears, because I was just like, man, now
that's a one patch of your lawn.
Yeah.
That's not your entire, that wasn't even like your main part of your lawn.
Right. Because I wasn't planning on doing any seeding that last year, but I had to do some seeding because of that. And anyway, I got over it. I didn't kind of get over it. I got over it because I was like, well, whatever. I just get to spend more time out in the yard now and work with my hands. Now, obviously, not everybody wants to be out there all the time, and it's more work than you maybe anticipated having. But, it's just kind of going with the flow. Everybody's going to have things that come up every year. It's funny because people think about like, well, Alan's lawn never looks like that. Or I think there's a lot of, and Alan even shows this, and Ryan does as well, and Connor does as well. If you guys don't know the listening, those are also two big YouTubers.
I'll link to them in the description of the podcast.
I think they talk about the problems they have, and that's what's fun about it all. Is it's not nobody has this perfect lawn. If people say they don't have any weeds, they're probably lying.
Right.
People have stuff that comes up, and
this is how you deal with it.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I like about the lawn care thing in general. It just kind of, there's a lot of things in my life that I kind of carried over, and it helps me because with the lawn care, you realize like, all right, so much of this is actually out of my control, and I can just do things, and I can only do things, to so much to try to help this. And that made me kind of carry over when I had kids. I was like, all right, my kids are little, and a lot of what they do right now, I have control, but I know when they get older, like I'm fearful whenever they turn into teenagers and in high school. I know there's going to be a lot of things that I'm going to have to rely on the way my parent or my wife and I raised them to, hopefully do the right things. And I just think there's a lot of carryover when you start kind of doing stuff like this, whether it be in the lawn or woodworking. There's a lot of stuff that are just out of your control, and I think there's a lot of life lessons you can learn from doing stuff like that. And that's one of the reasons why I love this stuff, because I think the lawn care community on YouTube and on Facebook and whatever, I think there's so many people that like, our lawns look awesome, but I think it helps a lot of people in so many more ways than we actually know.
Right.
I think it gives people some maybe way of identifying themselves and maybe working through a problem. I think Alan actually, in his last podcast, I think he talked about somebody he met at Lawncology, the Lawncology conference they went to, where I think it was Alan, I don't remember, but somebody was a big smoker, and they this guy found Alan's channel or whatever, and he fell in love with taking care of his yard, and that's how he beat smoking. And I was like, that's a perfect example of how I know this community is helping so many people in more ways than we think.
You never know. Well, that's a good transition to the final topic I wanted to get into, raising men lawn care. So this is really, really cool. Of course, you started bringing this, putting more of a spotlight on this, and even got the community rallied behind with the fundraiser. First of all, I guess let's start with that, because that happened. Gosh, how many months ago?
That was I think it started in September of 2018 and ended in October.
Okay.
So that's when that happened. That fundraiser was about a month long.
Okay. So for folks that don't know, Rodney Smith Jr. Sort of started this thing where it was his way of giving back, I guess. And even today, like if I go on Twitter right now, I'm sure I know he was, the last time I saw something, he was in Louisiana Louisiana. And
he's a hustler. He does not stop.
Over the place. And I even saw this morning, so we're recording this on Saturday, March 2nd. He had a veteran of our armed forces with him, and they were out mowing lawns together for people that couldn't do it.
Yep.
And it's his way of giving back to the community. He'd find, elderly people that may have an injury, just whatever it is, way of giving back. And he's also reaching out to kids that are wanting to do it. And I saw earlier this week, I don't know if you saw this, he went to a hardware store. I think he was in Alabama. I'm not sure. He may have been in Louisiana. They donated a brand new mower. He wasn't going to keep the mower. Yeah. He was giving the mower to a kid so that the kid could then be involved in raising him in lawn care. So it's just pretty awesome of what's happening here. And now here you are wanting to get that thing going here in the area. I saw it pop up. You posted in our St. Louis group. I was a little bit sort of like, can I do it? And I'm like, this would be pretty cool to get back because it is a passion of mine about lawn care. I'm like, why not? Like, what's it going to stop you from doing one lawn a week or taking a day out of your week to just go out and help somebody that can't do it? It's pretty cool. It's another way of giving back. So I'm volunteering for other things. I volunteer for Missouri State alumni stuff. This is another way to help directly make an impact in the community. So I guess talk a little about what you hope the St. Louis chapter of lawn care, raising men lawn care could be, and how folks might be able to get involved.
Yeah, I mean, I just hope it is just another way for people to get to know each other, because not only get to know each other, but to help those people in need. Because I think one of the things that Rodney's foundation brings to light is so many people that are actually vulnerable in your community or don't have the abilities to do that. I think there's far more people in your community than most people think. We think about different cities that have these rundown areas, and it doesn't always have to be an area that, isn't doing well.
Right.
It can just be like like my neighborhood. There's plenty of people in there that I know could use some help. And, that's how close it is for people that need help. Those people are just right down the road or whatever. And, so I don't really have any expectations for what the St. Louis thing should be. I just, I talked to Rodney after the fundraiser, and I said, I want to be more involved with what you're doing, because I just love what he does. I think there's so many positive things that come from it. Like I said, just like anything else, far more positive things come from it than I think people actually know.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's what I want to continue, spreading the word about his foundation, which I don't think he has a problem doing, because it's been on the news and national news and all that kind of stuff. But there's still more people that could stand to know more about it, and just bring that more to light in our community, and just being another footprint for his foundation is really just what I wanted for St. Louis is just to help his foundation and to bring together more people in our community. And honestly, what you and I are doing today, if I didn't start this chapter, I wouldn't have met you.
Absolutely.
And last week I met Coven Carlson. He's another lawn care enthusiast, but he's also joined the chapter. And if I wouldn't have done that, then I wouldn't have probably gotten to meet you guys face to face. And that's what, and I wanted to try to, I was going to mail people the shirts that joined the chapter, but I was like, no, I think I should go introduce myself and meet them and have that face to face contact, because it's more personable at that point, and it's just another way to get to know your community. And that's part of what all this is about. So
absolutely,
I think the second thing, aside from helping all those people, is giving kids something to hold on to, and maybe get them outside and start something to give them value. Because I think some kids, I don't know if kids really think about, well, what's my value? Maybe that's too deep for them to think about. But I think to some extent we overlook that as adults. I think we're like, oh, the kids don't think about what they can provide for their community. But I think when you give a kid an avenue to do that, they really realize wow, this is helping other people. And it could, whether or not they stay with lawn care stuff, that could encourage them to do something greater down the road in their lives. So that's another just very impactful thing I think his foundation does that is just remarkable. So
if folks wanted to get involved here, and if folks that are in the St. Louis area listening, how would you encourage them to reach out to you, or what's the best way that they can reach out and share their interest?
They can email me at thelawnguardian@gmail.com. And honestly, it's great if you've joined the chapter. If you don't join the chapter and you're just, hey, you know what? I think I've heard about this stuff and I'm just going to go out and help people without being part of this quote unquote chapter. Hey, great. You know, that's part of it too, is just encouraging people to go help others. So that's one way they can contact me via that. They can, you know, just go out and helping those people that are in need, encouraging kids, you know, to join the 50-yard challenge. That's part of what Rodney's Foundation is doing. And for anybody listening, the 50-yard challenge is kids go out and mow 50 lawns for those elderly, veterans, single moms, and the disabled. And once they've hit that 50-yard goal, Rodney actually comes and visits them and gives them brand new equipment, mower, trimmer, blower, all for free. And that's you know, that's one way people can do, is just encouraging kids. Hey, have you heard about this challenge that you could do? And everybody loves a challenge these days. Like, oh, you have a challenge? All right, I'll do it. Yeah. You know, that's especially kids.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Well, so I really appreciate you sharing that knowledge with us. And well, like I said, I'm now I think I even got more energized. I'm like, I can do more than just one lawn, like a week or something like that. So we'll see. Like I said, hey, we got to get past this winter, get through snow that we've got forecast here in St. Louis.
Well, and the great thing about it too is that even if you were to join the chapter, it's not about, like, it's just helping where you can. There's no obligation to anything. It's not like Rodney's like, Ben, you need to be doing this number of lawns. Just, you know, if you get one lawn a month or every 2 months,
any little bit can help.
Any little bit helps. And I'm not one that, you know, people don't, it's really informal. So like, people don't need to come to me and say, hey, I'm going to go do this. Like, you don't need to tell me, you just go do it. I'm just kind of the person that
driving down the street, you see somebody that needs help. Yeah. Maybe you knock on the door and say, hey, can I mow your lawn for you?
Exactly. And I'm just kind of the person that maybe facilitates certain things if someone needs help, or if I do get a referral to someone that needs help, I can say, hey, I think I have somebody, or I can go do it myself. Or, you know, it's super informal. There's no obligation to doing X number of lawns or whatever. It's just merely trying to help out and reach out to the community. So
that's great. Well, Ben, I appreciate it. This is great. And like I said, I'll share your contact info. We'll see if we can get people that maybe be interested in helping out, and if they want to, you know, hop on board. And you brought me this really cool T-shirt, so I'm excited to get out there and mow, because one thing that'll happen is when I wear it, people are like, what's that? And that's another way of awareness that'll be able to help out too. Yeah. So that'd be cool. Well, man, I really appreciate you taking time. This is fun, and we'll definitely have to get a group together or something. I know I've been posting on our St. Louis area lawn care nut about getting all the lawn care nuts in the area together for a happy hour or something. So as we more and more interact in person, maybe we can get that taken care of and meet up with some folks and share stuff like Raising Men Lawn Care, and just talk about our interest in being lawn care nuts together. Yeah,
I think it's easy for, especially in today's world where we're so wrapped up in being in front of TVs or computers or some sort of screen. It's hard to meet new people, and that's one of the things that I love about the community, is it kind of encourages people to, hey, okay, I know you via social media, but let's meet up or do something, you know? It's just a way to get to know people.
Think about how we used to be as kids. Like, we didn't always just do this on our phone. We would actually go out and meet people and interact with them. So it's awesome. Well, thanks so much, man. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
This is fun.
I want to thank Ben for being on the podcast. We had an absolutely great time chatting, even before I hit the record button, and I really look forward to hanging out with him even more in the future. You can follow him on Twitter at Lawn Guardian, and please check out his YouTube channel, youtube.com/The Lawn Guardian. And if you would like to help out those in need with lawn care and want to get back to the local community, shoot him a tweet or an email. His email address is thelawnguardian@gmail.com. I'll link it in the podcast description. You heard him describe it, the Raising Men Lawn Care program. It's nothing formal, but you never know what kind of difference you can make by helping those in need. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode, and would certainly welcome any feedback, questions, or comments. Feel free to shoot me a tweet at DDocket, and I invite you to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, or however you listen to the podcast. Thanks for listening to Persons of Interest.